crossing my fingers, hoping they're going to secretly release part 2 on Christmas Day this year.
I know.
Because I think we all need it.
Yeah, we do.
It's so good. Hi, I'm Alex.
I'm Madison.
And this is Welcome to the Writer's Room, the show where we analyze media in various forms and tell you why it works or why it doesn't.
Today we are talking about Wicked Part 1.
In honor of this movie being part 1 of Wicked, this is going to be part 1 of our review of part 1 of Wicked. We'll go up to around popular, which is like halfway through the movie.
But we do spoil the entire thing.
Many times.
And we'll go ahead and summarize the whole thing too.
Spoiler before we get into it, Wicked Part 1, the movie, is based off the musical Wicked from 2003, which is based off the book Wicked, which is actually a series of 4 books. So any of those, plus any Wizard of Oz extended universe, books, movies, plays, anything is all up for potential spoilers. You've been warned.
Okay, so I'll do a quick summary.
Fantastic. 3, 2, 1. Nellikanamen.
Wicked starts in Munchkinland with the celebration of the death of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West. Glinda joins the celebration and retells Elphaba's story, starting at Shiz University, where the two of them attended as roommates. They started out hating each other, but eventually become best friends. Glinda begins dating Fiero, a prince, and Elphaba learns from Dr. Dillamond about the animal oppression in Oz. Elphaba, who has been taking sorcery lessons from Madame Morrible, is summoned to the Emerald City to meet the wizard. She invites Glinda to go along, and the two of them meet the wizard together. Elphaba is asked to read from the Grimoire, where she gives the Oz guards wings. She realizes that the animal oppression is due to the wizard, who has no real powers. Elphaba runs away, taking the Grimoire with her. Madame Morrible announces to all of Oz that Elphaba is wicked and has stolen the Grimoire. Glinda tries to get Elphaba to join the wizard, but Elphaba says she can't, enchants a broom, and flies away on her own.
Wow. 47 seconds. Very quick, but so much happens.
Yes, yeah. Very minor summary, but yes, a ton of things happen. It's a huge movie.
For sure. So we just got back from the theater. We are fresh from our second viewing of Wicked. And I love it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good.
Absolutely phenomenal. So many good things, so many details they got right. I tried to go in without a bias because I really enjoy movie musicals specifically.
Yeah.
I love musicals. So when you get to tell a musical through a medium of cinema with all of that sort of terminology and that knowledge, I just really like it. And I like how things are mixed in movies, and it's just it's my thing. I really like it. But I try to go in without thinking one way or another about it. And after leaving both the first and second time, I feel like this movie is just phenomenal.
No, I agree. So we both definitely come from a theater background and love theater and love musicals and want to write musicals. And so I did also want to go at it from a not biased perspective, but I just feel like in general, it was a really, really good movie. Standalone on its own, I feel like it was easy to understand and it was entertaining. It was fast paced, even though it was a long movie. Just on its own without all of the lore behind it and all of the iterations that have happened and come before it, I still feel like it was a phenomenal film.
Absolutely. I agree.
Do you want to start just from sort of the beginning of things? I have little things I want to talk about. We didn't really take notes because we were in the theater.
Yeah, we were with family. That would have been weird.
But I think we can kind of still go through.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Okay, so it starts out in Munchkinland. There's a time jump, basically. This is the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the Wicked Witch having just died and everyone's sort of celebrating in Munchkinland her death, with Glinda there joining the celebration.
Yeah, that's our big opening number. Good news.
Yes, or No One Mourns the Wicked.
No One Mourns the Wicked.
I think, first of all, so it's both this movie and the musical are amazingly written. So just generally having this idea of it starting out with an entire celebration about the death of our main character is one of really cool opening. It hooks you. The song is catchy. It's interesting. This idea that no one mourns the wicked, that we are celebrating her, is really, really cool just on its own. But then I think taking that, because you have to understand the medium you're presenting the story from.
Mm-hmm.
So we aren't on stage. It was originally written for a stage and we're adapting it for something that has close-ups, right? So I think getting to zoom in and understand Glinda's perspective was very cool, and getting to see like her facial expressions and how this is not something she's happy about. She can't really see that on the stage as well. And so I think that was already a smart choice to like use the medium to their advantage, because we're seeing everybody celebrating, yelling at the top of their lungs, "No one mourns the wicked," as Glinda is mourning Elphaba. Like that's a genius opening.
It's good. Like you said, you can have the audience focus on specific things, which I think is good. And something this movie does a lot, which is one of the reasons I think it works so well, is that it's very obvious with all of its main things it wants you to understand. But the way it shows you those things is like 10 different ways, and it layers it, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, in the music originally, like Glinda goes on to sing like, well, you know, people, are they born wicked? Like, just like anybody else, she had a life. So that tells the audience that like, oh, Glinda obviously feels some type of way about this.
Yes.
But layering that with all the facial expressions you're seeing, all the inner cuts, how she's getting cut off by the mob and things. It's the same idea iterated in so many different subtle ways that it becomes this really obvious idea that doesn't feel like my hands being held. Like it feels like I got that information myself, like I figured it out.
Yeah.
But it's because they're doing a masterful job of crafting the way to find all the information.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's present throughout the entire movie. Every single song, every single scene. It's so obvious, but in the best way.
It felt like they had a reason to make it a film. You know, it wasn't just like, let's make money from this, because it would have made money regardless of it being good. But they also took and decided how they were going to make it a good film on its own, which is really hard to do. So, yeah.
I think, so this introduces Ariana Grande as Glinda.
Yes.
Which I think after seeing the second time, I'm even more just surprised at how out of the park she knocked this. She absolutely destroyed this role. It was great. Everything about it. I felt like, I said this in the car, I felt like you can tell she respects the source material.
Yeah.
Like she's obviously a big fan. She's like done her homework on things, but it was so fun to watch her make her interpretation of the character that wasn't just Ariana Grande. Like I could fully suspend my disbelief that this is like a world-renowned pop star, and like that was Glinda for like 2.5 hours.
Yeah. I also think it's really easy to completely look at the character of Glinda and say, oh, well, she's just ditzy and dumb. And I think that is like a disservice to the writing. I just don't think that's true. I think there's so much more to her than that. And I think Ariana Grande understood that, and that even a character like Glinda has a ton of depth, right? It's not just straightforward and simple. What she's doing is clever and manipulative, and what she values is very specific. And I think that Ariana Grande understood that and respected that, and gave her such a nuanced character with so much depth behind her, which was so fun to watch. And I think it made it better. And especially because obviously, like, we're going to get to Elphaba, but Elphaba, for the most part, is playing off of Glinda. Like, yeah, she has other people like Fiyero and her sister and her dad, but like it really is mostly about her and Glinda together and her playing off of that. And so had Ariana Grande's portrait of Glinda been sort of shallow, and yes, that character itself is shallow, but I'm saying like had her creation of that character been one note and not motivated, it would have taken Cynthia Erivo's character down with her, you know? She wouldn't have had anything to play off of. So I think that was just, I mean, she had to audition for it like 6 times. She'd been taking lessons specifically for the role of Glinda for like 5 years or something crazy like that. Like this has been her dream since she was a little kid to play this role.
That's crazy. Yeah. So they get in, before we get into like the next section, the other sort of what I liked, one of my favorite things about the movie is how they treated it like a movie instead of just taking everything to the stage. And one of the most obvious ways to me was how they took the scoring of the movie.
Yeah.
So in a musical, you have the songs, and sometimes you'll have like underscores, but it's not super realistic to think of the band playing constantly for 3.5 hours every single night. That's just a lot of music. But in a film, because you're recording it, you want more scenes underscored. You want music playing to add to the mood. That's just sort of what audiences are used to. And the writing of Wicked by Stephen Schwartz is phenomenal. His lyrics are fantastic. The music fits perfectly in the world. But as a film, they and I guess Steven Schwartz did a lot of this orchestration. Like he
I think
wrote
so,
a lot
yeah.
of the music. He took his themes, specifically a lot of themes from the second act of the show, and wove them into the scenes within this movie. So even though like a song wasn't playing, you would hear a theme that comes back later.
Yeah.
Which was just super, super impactful.
I think it's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Absolutely. And I think it tells me that they knew what they were doing. Like
Right.
like you said, there's a reason they're making this a movie. And I think I said this too. Like they wrote motifs the way that like Lord of the Rings does them, which added to this epicness. Specifically, there's a
Yes.
song in Act 2, it's called For Good, which is like the Elphaba and Glinda, like no matter what happens, we're friends and our lives are changed because of you.
Right.
And somebody in the crowd asks Glinda, since the witch is dead, she's like, weren't you two friends? And she says at one point, and you hear the theme of For Good play. And like, it's just good music on its own. So it doesn't detract if you don't know. But if you do know what happens, and if you do know the show, it just adds this entire other layer of depth to this scene that's never happened before, which I thought was really, really cool to watch.
What I want to say is, so immediately Glinda says our paths did cross at school, right? And the theme For Good place. I just want to read you. So obviously Wicked Part 2 is not out. There's going to be a song that plays in Part 2. I want to read you the lyrics.
Okay.
How For Good starts. Okay. She says, I'm limited. Elphaba says, just look at me. I'm limited. And look at you. You can do all I couldn't do, Glinda. So now it's up to you for both of us. Now it's up to you. Which, this is like huge spoilers, but basically at the end of like the musical Wicked, this is what Elphaba says to Glinda and wants her to keep like exactly what these lyrics say. You see what I'm saying? Yep. So for that to start where in the time span of where we are, Glinda has just had this moment with Elphaba not that long ago and has just come to Munchkin Land to celebrate the death. And this idea that she's going to continue on this, what Elphaba wanted to continue on. And she's doing that here right now for good. Like that's so genius to play that there. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I feel like that's hard to explain. But yeah, very, very, very good use of, they all become these motifs and these themes, these like musical themes that then play throughout when that theme is present in the story.
Yeah. And it's never done in a not smart way. Like it plays at a point that is very appropriate and elevates the scene more than it would have normally been. Like the movie would survive without this, but I feel like this was another touch. Like somebody painstakingly thought through this and said, this will make this movie better every single time. And I think it was a huge difference from the live show, which makes the movie stand on its own more, but also does this tremendous job paying tribute to it.
Yes.
Which I think I want to say, neither of us were like haters or anything, but we weren't like incredible Wicked fans before. I had seen the show live. You had not seen it. And I always felt it was one of those, like, I knew it was very good, but I think I watched it when I wasn't like ready to really get into it. So I was like, oh yeah, that was really cool. But now with this movie, I'm like realizing just like how extraordinary the show is.
Right. And like, I've always loved the songs and like, I've known them. I've just grown up with them and like, but I've never from the beginning gone and like, I've never had the opportunity to go see it on Broadway. Right. And so I've never been like super invested in it because I just don't know the story. And I think it's more fun when you're watching something. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I've always been like, I've loved Wicked, but I've never been like a diehard like Wicked fan before this. See what I'm saying? I want to say one more thing that I forgot though.
Yeah, sure.
I want to go back. So it starts right before this. It gives you like a little, you see like the clock tower and then you to sort of set the time frame of where we are, of what's just happened. And you see Dorothy and her like crew walking back to the Emerald City after Elphaba has just been like the melting scenario has happened. We get this really cool moment where, and you can talk about this if you want, but we literally, the camera sweeps over the rainbow as the score for where she sings Unlimited is playing as she's going over the rainbow, which I just thought was really cool because she always talk about how the idea of unlimited, he got that song moment, that part of the music from the Over the Rainbow song from The Wizard of Oz. So I thought it was really cool that we're playing that exact moment as we're literally going over the rainbow with the camera. I just thought that was
there
very
are just
cool.
so many layers of smart choices made on everybody's part. And I feel like that's another reason that this movie is so good when it really didn't have to be.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, it could have been another movie musical that comes out and is fine. And the people who like Wicked will probably like it. But it's incredibly clear that already the product they had to start with was so thought out and so thorough in terms of the book, the lyrics, the characters. They wanted to keep all that and then add these additional things that just like sparkle on top of it.
Yes.
And it's just super fun. We can move on to the next scene, but I also think opening of Munchkinland is cool because you get to see all these brilliant colors and all these fun costumes, and you realize like every single person cares. Like every time a background character is dancing, I know they are so focused on what they're doing. Like they care so much, and the costumes are so well thought out, and the sets look so phenomenal. It truly, like, it's magical. It
is magical.
It honestly feels like I'm watching an epic fantasy story play out, because that's exactly what it is.
And some people have complaints about the colors. I don't. I think it looked phenomenal.
I don't know what movie they saw.
I think because basically people feel like it should have been like Technicolor, you know, like how it is in The Wizard of Oz. But this is not. I never would have been like, wow, this movie is so dull.
Yeah.
Right. I thought it was beautiful and colorful. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't like Technicolor looking, but it's not supposed to be. You know, it's not like we're looking at this through rose-colored glasses. Like we're supposed to be this real world with flaws.
And it's like you said, it's not that it's not colorful. Like it's not a gray wash.
Right.
You know? I think the idea to be like, oh, it should have been in Technicolor because of Wizard of Oz is like a cheap first idea you have, and then they refined that idea, and then they got the gorgeous color palette they did.
Yes, it's all very cohesive to me.
Absolutely.
And I also think, I think it all goes together really well.
So, yeah, okay. So we go on. They go to Glinda starts talking about how Elphaba was born and raised,
right?
And
well, I was gonna ask, do you know if they do the moments with the little kids in the musical? Do you happen to remember?
I'm pretty sure they don't.
Okay, which I think was a really good addition. Just seeing like little
cute.
Elphaba and how from the beginning how her father has treated her and how the people of that world have treated her I think was really, even her as like a little kid who's like done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
we
like
she like her animal nanny is the only one who's nice to her, which gives her a lot of motivation.
Which they changed. The nanny is not an animal in the musical, which I think was smart.
Yeah, they also changed some lyrics.
Yeah.
Just again, like cementing these ideas they have for the like animal cruelty plot, Elphaba's sort of motivations throughout the movie.
Yeah,
it's all very well done.
I also, in general, the like sort of overall thing is what creates wickedness. Like what does it mean to be quote good?
Yeah,
right, is kind of like the main theme, and they really I think like from the very beginning they've done a really good job of playing that up. Right, like Glinda says like they have wickedness thrust upon them, right? And like from the very beginning she's been treated as if she's evil before anyone's even like spoken to her, you know?
Yeah.
Like the moment she's born, and that's really cool seeing her born and immediately being like treated horribly by her father.
Yeah.
Which I've had this like thought. I wonder, and maybe this is more like in the books, but I'm wondering sort of, is magic inherently evil in some ways? Because every time she uses magic, it feels negative. Does that make sense? And maybe evil's not the right word. But do you see what I'm saying? There's something there that I haven't like figured out how that goes with the theme yet.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Because there are only two people who are actually magic in the world. It's Elphaba and Madame Morrible. But I don't know. I feel like it's because they say in the movie her magic is tied to her emotions, Elphaba. And I think like defying gravity and stuff, I don't think that's like a wicked use, you know? Like that's her like liberating herself.
So maybe it's just the lens it's viewed from, I guess.
I think so, maybe.
And so the idea that when people treat her poorly, I guess this is what it is. It's supposed to be like sort of a metaphor and an exaggerated case of like when someone is treated, when they're backed into a corner and treated terribly and like abused essentially, and they lash out, everyone forgets that they were abused first. Maybe it's sort of just like a metaphor for that instance. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's more to it, but I guess I'll see if I figure it out in better words as we go
I'm
on.
in the process of reading the book, so I'll get back to you on it.
Okay, because I think there's something to it. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Gotcha.
So then, yeah, I thought another thing that was just a very cool idea was how how you get to shiz on these boats, which I'm so sure they don't do that in the musical, right? Like, again, it just gives it such a fun perspective and such a fun way of.
Yeah, it's cute. And another like great set. It looks phenomenal. The costumes are great.
Makes it really interesting, you know? And yeah, I guess talking about the costumes, like from the beginning, Glinda has supposed to felt like light and airy, and they do a really cool job of making that throughout her costumes. Which is, yeah, just very fun.
So this is, I assume they're like 17 or something at this point.
I don't think so. I think they're supposed to be a little older.
Really? To go to, I guess, like college?
Because it's not real. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like our world.
They're the perfect age for a big adventure.
Yes.
I'll say they've grown up. So Glinda is off to shiz. And then Nessa, Elphaba's sister, is also like accepted.
Yes.
And her whole thing is she's in a wheelchair. So she has sort of been taken care of, and she wants to be very independent and stuff. And then Elphaba also goes with them, with her father and Nessa and everybody's like looking at her, and she's like, "No, I'm not seasick." Very apprehensive.
They do this really cool thing where they're out the choir singing, and they stop on the word shiz, and they all literally end the word shiz by hissing at her. Shiz, and they like literally hiss at Elphaba.
It's really good,
which is so good. Like they don't even know her, and they're hissing at her. They also. The costume designer also said he starts Elphaba feeling very like buttoned up because it's supposed to feel almost like armor. She's got her armor up. So she's got all these very structured, almost suffocating pieces of clothing.
Her hair's tied in braids.
Yes. Very cool. Very cool. You see that like visual. They tell the story visually in a very great way.
I don't know what they did for the makeup, but this is seeing Elphaba for the first time. Cynthia Erivo in the makeup. I thought the makeup looked so good.
Well, they even asked Cynthia Erivo, "Hey, do you want to do this with makeup or do you want to do it digitally?" And she said, "No, I want to do it with makeup." It took like 4+ hours to put on. She's wearing a wig.
Sense. I mean, it looks phenomenal, and she looks gorgeous.
She does, and I think that's important because it's not that she's ugly, right? Like the reason why people treat her cruelly is just because she's green, right? There's not any other reason. So I think it's very important that she did look pretty because Cynthia Erivo is very pretty, but you could do the makeup poorly and she wouldn't look pretty, and I do think it's important that she
I think again like it was a narrative choice was made, but also a flawless technical execution. Like every time we see her, she just looks great.
Yes. We even see like the silver shoes, which in the book, the Wizard of Oz book, if you don't know this, the ruby slippers are silver in the book. And they just made them red because the color on the film
in the Wizard of Oz
in the movie, they thought it would look cooler if they were red, and which they were right, that was cool. But in the books, they're silver, so that's what those are. They're the silver shoes. They're the magic shoes that we see later on, and the father gives them to Nessa, and it was cool because they're in a ruby red case, you know. Just to sort of again give a little Easter egg. There's like a ton of Easter eggs, and spoiler, Nessa Rose becomes the Wicked Witch of the East, and she's even as like little Nessa Rose, or like here she's in these like striped socks, just like when the house falls on her. Very cool, very good. And we meet Madame Morrible. Elphaba accidentally like acts out with her magic and like stops the lady from taking Nessa.
Again, like it's very, very obviously framed. Her powers are emotion based, and the emotion comes out when she's protecting Nessa. So it's never like a malice thing. It's always like for the person she loves.
Right.
Which is cool. So she like levitates the whole thing. It's set up from the beginning that her main thing is like levitating, which is genius because like defying gravity later on. So she sees this Madame Morrible, who is like the dean of magic at the school, sees this, tries to like play it off to everybody else, and she's like, "You need to study with me."
But what's crazy, absolutely bananas, is everyone, when Elphaba uses her powers, everyone's terrified and screaming and running. And then Madame Morrible says, "That was me, everybody. I just wanted to demonstrate." And everyone claps for her. So like that's such a good way to show that it's like has nothing to do with Elphaba's actions. It is only that it's Elphaba.
Yeah. We also get introduced at this point. Glinda has 2 like side characters with her, and they're sort of comic relief. They're 2 students, and a lot of their lines are like improv. They just like sort of went off on the things, and I think they're funny enough. Like I think they do a good job.
I thought it was pretty funny. Especially Bowen Yang. He's like, I thought he was really, really funny.
Yeah, I thought it was good. They felt the most modern out of everybody.
Yeah, I guess that's
Because
true.
the things they were saying, I think they were funny. They just like, I don't know. And this, so the main idea of the show, one of the main ideas is that like animals are being blamed for things in Oz, right? Which is like a very clear metaphor for like this oppressed community,
Yes.
which is something that is tackled differently. There has been now, but like for a long time, there wasn't really a black Elphaba on stage. So like her being green wasn't directly compared to her being a darker skin tone, right?
Yeah.
But when you cast someone like Cynthia Erivo, it begs that sort of comparison, which I don't think is bad by any means.
No, I think that's a good thing.
And it just sort of, it adds this other layer where you have this person of color being ostracized for her skin color, while also this other group of animals is being ostracized for being animals. And it's just, I think it's a dynamic you need to balance well, which I think they do.
I think they do as well. Because I do agree that's a hard balance.
But I remember specifically Bowen Yang says something like after they first meet, and everybody's like, oh my God, she's green. And then he, as a joke, says, I don't see color, which I did laugh the first time. I thought it was funny. But then it just sort of got me thinking. I'm like, does that make sense in the context of like what's happening? You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it like is a huge issue. I just think that's what I mean when they're funny, but it also like had the most pull to take me out sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they would say things that are very meta.
I guess that's true. I just don't think it bothers me because I think there's obvious parallels to this world and people should be comparing it. You know?
Yeah.
And like, granted, there it is magic and she's green. She's not black, right? She is, but like, you see what I'm saying? Like, she's green. It's not the same. You can't 1-for-1 racism, right?
No, I understand. I just think like in the context, like somebody who says like, I don't see color is like a problematic sort of justifying themselves, which in this world of injustice happening, it just sort of like adds this complicated layer of things, which again, like very minor thing. I just noticed that because I do think they try to hit hard the activism of the thing. And I think that's really the whole thing overall. Like, what is Wicked? Wicked can be actively doing something wrong. It can be inactively watching wrong being done.
Right,
like
Glinda,
you find out through this show that Glinda is just as much to blame, even though she didn't really have a hand in doing anything, but she didn't stop. Right.
Right.
Which I think when those are your biggest themes, like every line of dialogue that relates to that does matter. And not to say that it makes it worse in any way. It just made me think about it in a way that I'm not super, I don't know if they intended it that way, but I do think it was a funny line. I don't think it was a bad line at all.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't take me out of it because I think that the world is quirky enough that and typically it wasn't during like any serious moments or anything. It's usually during transitions when they're making funny moments like that. So I think it was, and I bet he did improv things that could have taken you out of the moment, right? And I think it was they specifically chose these sort of throwaway lines during transition moments, so I don't think it bothered me.
I agree. No, I don't think it was. I mean, I definitely don't think it made the movie any worse. It was just an interesting thing for me to watch the first time.
No,
I remember that stuck out to me and I remembered it.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, but moving on. So Madame Morrible, basically, which, by the way, her name is Madame Morrible. Like, that rhyme horrible. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it's quite foreshadowed that she is going to. I mean, I think they do a great job of not letting you realize that she's going to be the evil one. But I just think that's funny that her name is Madame Morrible.
Yeah.
So she basically says, I'm Elphaba, like, I'll tutor you in sorcery. I want you to learn, and eventually maybe you can go on to meet the wizard. Which the whole thing about the wizard is that he like grants you your heart's desire. You get a wish from him, kind of thing. Yeah,
we find that in the flashback when they're young. And as of right now, like Elphaba just wants to be like normal. She wants to be like loved, and which is, you know, relatable. And
I think something Cynthia Erivo does so well is she gives her such confidence, and it really does feel like she doesn't care what other people think. And she's got like thick skin, you know, because she kind of has to. And she's very confident and sure of herself. So when you see the foundation crack, when you see her wish so badly, like in The Wizard and I, that she didn't have to live this life, it means more, you know, because she never puts herself as the victim, and she always she's an activist, especially for other people who are victims of like cruelty and things like that, and stands up for people like Nessa and Dr. Dillamond, right? Yeah. And so when you see her like in the song The Wizard and I, you see through the armor almost. It just makes it so sad.
It's good. And this, while we're talking, so we're into The Wizard and I, which is the I want song of the show. It's
Yes.
Elphaba saying what she thinks she wants in this moment.
Which it also becomes like this whole thing becomes a theme for her,
Yeah.
song wise. Which I wanted to. Sorry, I skipped something. When Elphaba and Glinda first meet, which we're
Mhm.
calling her Glinda right now. She's technically Galinda, but I'm saying Glinda. When they first meet, Loathing plays in the background. The song
Yeah.
Loathing plays, which is just really good. Again, it's like a theme for their discontent for each other.
Mhm.
Very cool. But continue on what were you saying about?
So we're into the song, and twice now I'm just completely blown away. Cynthia Erivo, I know her as a Broadway actress. She's been in some other films also.
Which I will say, we haven't been huge Wicked fans, but
Mhm.
we have been huge Cynthia Erivo fans.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have always.
I think she got on most people's radar when she was in The Color Purple, won the Tony for Best Actress.
Mhm.
Well deserved. She's phenomenal. And it's so striking to me, not only the vocal prowess of her, I think she is truly one of the best singers alive.
I would agree.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
But the way she can act in this movie is just unreal.
Right. Especially because I think she does more stage than film,
Mhm.
you know? And so I kind of think it's harder going from film to stage than vice versa. But for her talent to translate so effectively onto film.
Well, and just like you said, with transferring mediums, knowing the medium to do these subtle, tiny things. Like the first time we see her and Glinda are staring each other down, and Glinda goes, "You're green." And she looks at her hands and goes, "I am." And she gives this minuscule, like microscopic smile at the end, which tells me so much about her
Mhm.
character. And it is crazy to me that anyone can do that.
Well, even when, so Madame Morrible has her little thing where she's like, I've waited for you, right? One day, maybe if you make good, maybe one day you can meet the wizard. And she walks away. And the first thing, the lyrics are, did that really just happen, right? And Cynthia Erivo literally like smiles, like it's like her guard was let down, right? Where she's alone now. And she like smiles, like she can't even fathom that this is an option for her. And something that she's always been, to be ashamed of, especially by her father, for like this magic that's being revered now. It's just very, very so skilled. She's so talented and makes you see. I always like when I'm directing actors, I always say like, tell the audience how they're supposed to feel, right? Like let them know what you're feeling right now. Like show the audience what you feel. And she does that so well. Like we know exactly what she's feeling because she shows us and lets us in.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's phenomenal. It's
her vulnerability. She's so good at being vulnerable.
It truly is. It's so genuine. It's great.
Yeah, and I think The Wizard and I has been one of my absolute all-time favorite songs for like a long time from Wicked. Like,
gotcha.
it's a
I don't
top
think
song
that,
for
but I
me.
think now it is.
It's so good. One, I think like the singing is beautiful, the choreography is great. I really think one of the really cool parts is, which the director, John M. Chu, is that his name? The director is, I think he's really good at everything. I don't want to call it a bit because a bit like implies that it's not serious, but every single scene and musical number and every scene, I should say, and musical number has a point of view behind it. And so like this one it was like carefree, and she goes into that little area with all the like stained glass colors.
Yeah.
And she's looking in the one that's green, right? And singing about how like what she wants, right? Is that she wants to not be green anymore. She wants to be, normal. And then as she's singing, the lyrics are like degreenify you. And I was like, when I saw these like
it's like stained glass
swirling around.
Yeah, that changed. Like she walks in and they're like casting color, and I immediately I was like, oh, they're gonna,
I was like, do it,
color.
do it, because green and red cancel each other. And I was like, y'all better do it. And so as she's literally singing the words degreenify you, the red stained glass, the light hits it and casts her in this red light, which makes her skin look like a normal brown color.
Gorgeous.
And it's so cool. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's so well done. That's why it's so entertaining. That's why it doesn't feel like 2 hours and 46 minutes, because so many things happen to keep you entertained.
Yeah. And that's another thing I mean. Like that's not in the show. Like how are they going to do that? Like the lyrics tell you what she wants. And then they have this additional visual that just cements the idea. And it's so obvious, but it doesn't feel obvious because it's creative and it's fun and it's like you're on the edge of your seat because there's always something like that happening.
Yes, and it's cohesive in the world. You know,
Mhm.
it fits the world. It's not some random store that has these circling pieces of light or glass.
Yeah.
You know, like it makes sense here.
So this is the first time like we've heard the word like good a lot in the show, which is something that I think
Yes.
Steven Schwartz excels at, which is taking like a word or a phrase and getting the absolute most out of it. And I think the big word for this one is good, you know?
Yes.
Because we start off, good news is the first thing we hear everybody sing. We're thinking that.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness is another one. Because Glinda's sort of like this person's wicked, and then like goodness triumphed, and then they say goodness knows, which is like a double entendre, because it's like, oh, goodness this, but also like the idea of goodness knows that wicked is bad. Madame Morrible specifically says make good, which sounds weird out of context, but it's this whole idea of like what is good, and then later we find out like what is right, like what is artificially, what is on the surface, like what does everybody want you to do, and then what should you actually do in real life,
Right.
which I think is just, again, so strong.
Or how goodness is perceived, because
Uh-huh.
there's even throwaway jokes that I think the character's name is Fanny, but Bowen Yang's character,
Uh-huh.
where he literally is like making jokes and he's like, oh no, Glinda, you're so good, no,
Yeah.
that was so good of you. And it's funny, but it's also like how good is used almost as propaganda.
I would
Right?
say it is.
Yeah, and I think that comes to fruition a lot in this animal oppression, because it's under the guise that
Mhm.
the animals are the fault of something wrong, right? And how we can use goodness as a weapon.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the wizard does, right? And Glinda does it too.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
it's
silly
really
when
like
she does
good
it.
is like the status quo,
Yes.
which is awesome. Because if you think of like who is the embodiment of good, Glinda the good, as she gets
Yes.
named in Act 2. And what does Glinda do? Stand on the sidelines and let things happen, right? She becomes inactive in her story, which is exactly what the powerful people want, which is just crazy, and then to revere it all back in the opening number, like goodness knows that wicked is bad. And it's like, that's so smart.
Especially because Elphaba is the only good person we see.
Yeah.
I would say the only good person. Fiyero
Yeah.
tries to be, but he's not, because the whole thing is that he does not try. Yeah, he saved the Lion Cup. That's not anywhere near the same of what Elphaba tries to do.
Yeah.
Elphaba is an activist, and she's
Mhm.
the only one that's, quote, good. I mean, I guess you could say Dr. Dillamond is, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important, that everyone thrusts wickedness upon her because she is not the status quo.
Yeah. I think I saw this like tweet somewhere, and it was like, wicked is literally just about like a radical friend not being friends with your liberal friend anymore because they're not radical enough.
Right.
And it's true, because like Glinda's not a bad person,
No.
but her inactivity in the story labels like she's not a good person, right?
No.
And the same thing with Dr. Dillamond. Like, I don't think Dr. Dillamond's a bad person, but he is the one that is involved in this oppression. So he does not have the tools necessary to change anything by himself, right? Like, Glinda sufficiently does. Like, if she wanted to do something, she could make a difference, but she chooses not to, right? Where Elphaba is the only person where everything lines up. She has the tools and she has the means and she can do it, and she does. She tries to. So I agree. And it's just, again, we've been talking about 10 minutes about one word in the show.
I know.
And that's how thoroughly thought out every idea is.
Well, also because Dr. Dillamond is essentially powerless, right? And the
Yes.
oppression then takes away even his speech.
Uh-huh.
And so Elphaba's not in that. She's not powerless. If she was powerless, she'd be right there with them.
Yes.
And that's the whole point that makes her like special and
Mhm.
able to do what she's doing. And I think that adds so much depth to with Glinda not having any actual power, but she is so much more powerful than Elphaba because everybody listens to her.
Yeah.
It's
good. Anyway, the song ends. We get another.
Well, I wanted to say this. She runs at the end of it when
Uh-huh.
she's like the big like ending and crescendo at the end. She runs out and sees the impassable desert.
Yeah.
And I think I tried looking it up. I think the desert completely surrounds Oz. So I do
Okay.
think the point is that she was looking out west.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Mhm.
why she's like running through this field out to the desert.
That's cool.
It's very cool.
I was gonna say before that, we go in, she goes past the light thing, she goes into another cave and she sees the wizard's face.
Yes.
And she, for the first time, sings the Unlimited theme,
Yes.
which again, like people post this all over the place. Unlimited is an octave jump, unlimited, which is taken from Somewhere Over the Rainbow from the Wizard of Oz to sort of signify a lot of different things.
Like wanting, dreaming, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what Somewhere Over the Rainbow is about. It's about wanting somewhere better and different. And that's sort of what Elphaba obviously wants as well.
Which again, this theme sort of carries around. It's played before in the movie. It will continue to play whenever she's trying to achieve something or going against the grain of something. And the lyrics change later, and it's just a really important moment,
Yes.
which I think was done phenomenally. And it's sung beautifully, and it's great.
And I think what's really cool about The Wizard and I is she starts singing about, in which I like that they played it up. She can't do this in the musical, right? She sees a vision of them celebrating in Munchkin Land, and she says like, I've just had a vision, almost like a prophecy. It's a celebration throughout Oz. That's all to do with me, and that's true. She's seeing the future accurately. Just the sad thing
she's
is
seeing what we saw at the beginning,
right? She's just not seeing that they're celebrating her dying.
Yeah. Which is, again, like the word choice. It's not like celebrating me. It's all to do with me.
Right.
Like it's all about me. So she's having this correct vision. And it's irony for the audience because we know, even if we can't piece it together, like it's pretty early in the show. So I think a lot of people, including myself, weren't thinking like, oh, geez, at the end, you know?
And it's on the space of the wizard. We're
exactly.
seeing this wizard.
Upon rewatching, it's just like you know, from the moment what happened. It's like when you open a book and it says I die at the end, right? It's like you know it, but it makes it even more heart-wrenching every single time.
Yes, because we know more than Elphaba, and so it's like in Romeo and Juliet starts with a prologue telling you they die in the end. You know, this starts with a prologue telling you she dies in the end.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much sadder because you're rooting for her so much the whole time.
Yeah.
And you see her fight. It's so sad. Anything else you're gonna say about that?
No, I think again it's just a great sequence. So after the first movie, like any fan of Wicked, we immediately listened through the entire cast recording of the movie. And I don't know what they did. Maybe they just took the audio from the film and put it into the soundtrack. Because a lot of the times if you're singing on set,
which they sang live,
which they did, which is cool, and I think it helped a lot of the performances, you'll usually do a couple takes in a studio for like the official cast recording, just to like balance things out. Because in the theater, especially now listening for it a second time in the theater, everything sounds great. The mixing is phenomenal. The orchestra sounds huge. The voices sound great. Everything's mixed together. The dialogue into singing goes well. In the album, I would venture to say it sounds bad.
I don't think they've mixed it very well in the album.
And I'm wondering if they just took what they did in the movie and put it on the album, which is cool. But again, like if you're mixing for a surround sound IMAX sort of space, taking it into just a general like Spotify compression, it's going to sound very different. And I think it sounds different in some less than stellar ways. I think Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo towards the beginning sound very harsh and aspirated. They don't
actually sound that way. Like that's how they've been mixed.
The mixing is very strange. Yeah. I think the orchestra sounds very, very muddy. And I'm all for like, I want to hear what I heard in the movie, but I do think changes need to be made transferring it to just a like streaming listening medium. So that's all I would say. Like the movie sounds great. The album gets better, but it starts out weird. I'll say.
No, I agree. Yeah. So the next thing that happens is Elphaba goes into her shared suite with Glinda because Glinda accidentally volunteered to share with her. And as soon as we see all of Glinda's stuff, the popular theme plays. Yeah. Which is really fun. Cute. And we have this is just sort of the start of them like disliking each other and them sort of clashing. And there's so much comedy here, right? Ariana Grande is so good at being funny. Yeah. Which I think she's always been an incredibly talented performer. Like she's funny in Victoria. She's a talented actress. She's been on stage before. She's done musicals before. Like she's very, very talented. And so I was excited when she got this role. And I just think it's great to see her like.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny because it's not only that she's funny, I can see the table work being done to make this such a fully realized character, which you've said before. Like it's always funny in a way that is genuine to the character. Like I
Right.
never once was like Glinda wouldn't do that.
Right.
Like that's exactly what Glinda would do.
Well, I also think she just had a fully realized character because
Yeah.
Kristen Chenoweth is absolutely phenomenal. She's the original Glinda, and she's
Mhm.
iconic in the role.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And I think Ariana Grande did a great job of making this her own, but
Mhm.
really sticking towards the character. So good, so good.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
in Loathing, one, it's very funny, which the thing is like people have been listening to this for 20 years, right? Like
Mhm.
the song Loathing, I know so well. And so for them to be able to say the exact same words, Dearest
Mhm.
Darling, Small, right? That whole opening,
Yeah.
Blonde, those jokes, I don't know how they were able to make them land and be so different enough that, but still have such good timing that you can laugh at it,
Yeah.
even after hearing that joke for 20 years, literally.
It's really amazing. And it's double amazing because again, we know that both of these actresses are fans, respect the original material. So to have such a respect and then also the comfortability to make it your own in that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I've thought this throughout the entirety of my second watch. I can't imagine anybody else besides Cynthia Erivo being the film Elphaba.
Yes,
You
I
know?
agree.
And I can't imagine anyone else being the film Glinda besides Ariana Grande. Like they just fully, that's who I need.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I also think the camera work is phenomenal in this one. Like it's very cute, very fun. They do the split screen thing where you can see the letters that they're both writing when they lay in bed. You can see how they're like interacting with the lights together. And again, that's something that doesn't happen in the stage. So I
Mhm.
think it's just a really cute sequence to get this song sort of refreshed and fun in your mind, especially
Yeah.
when you know it.
And the lighting was so fun, like all the pink light coming from Glinda's side. It was all
Yeah.
very warm on her side and then really cool on Elphaba's side, and like the silver moonlight. It's just all very done again. And the sound design is really cool. Everything is like so extremely aggressive in the sound
Yes,
design. Like
very
the
heavy.
covers are like, it's so anytime someone like hits something or whatever, it's so
It's a
loud.
big,
It's
like,
boom.
hit.
Yeah. It's which I think is just fun. It gives it everything feels
It
like
is
big
fun.
and grand and epic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it feels like a really fun choice that helped keep things entertaining and moving.
I think so.
Obviously everybody loves the choreography in Loathing. They sound great. I think she has
Yeah.
they gave Elphaba some of the absolute cutest costumes in Loathing, like her hair.
I think so. Absolutely.
In both the ponytail and the pigtail, so freaking cute.
Very cute.
Um,
The uniforms everybody's wearing. I do want to say everybody does love the choreography. I love how modernized all the choreography is. I don't
Me
I don't
too.
have the original show choreography memorized by any means, but it's a lot of it's different. Like they had a choreographer for the movie to specifically work with like the sets and the groups because they have much more like a lot more people
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And I just love how modern it feels without getting weird about it,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's cool because different places have different styles of choreography. Like when we
Yeah.
get to the Emerald City, they dance very different from the people at Shiz, which I thought was neat. And I think that's
Yes.
like a bigger metaphor in itself, which I'll talk about later. But it was just every dance felt so energized.
Yeah.
Like it was a 10 out of 10 energy the whole time in the best way. Cause I was like, I don't know. As somebody who like doesn't dance, every time I saw a number, I was like, that's it. I'm taking lessons. I need to learn how to do
Right.
this. It was so good. And it was so creative and it was so fun. And it kept true to the original, like the vibe of Wicked. Like nothing felt out of place where I feel like it very easily could have. Like if
Yeah.
they just did a bunch of TikTok dances or something,
Yeah.
which they definitely could have, but they didn't.
It's because it's modern, but this world is very quirky. Like
Yeah.
even they use the like made up words.
Yeah.
So it's a very quirky, kind of silly world. And so they have these modern type dances that are also quirky and
I
a little
think so
bit off,
too.
they're
Like
a little bit
it's
weird.
off a beat at a time, or like they do an odd number of things. And I think it adds.
It's cohesive within the world.
yes.
Yeah. I also think it's cool that I feel like if Elphaba wasn't green, she'd be incredibly popular.
Yeah.
She's smart, she's funny, she's capable. You know what I'm saying? She's fashionable. She's so fashionable.
She
And
is
so
fashionable.
I feel like she would be I've always hated this. The way they dress Elphaba in the musical with like the beanie and the
Uh-huh.
glasses and stuff like that. And so she looks so she's not like flattering on anyone to me
Yeah.
the way it looks. And so I think this was a fun choice to make Elphaba like fashionable.
Yeah, I do think the beanie and stuff works because specifically you have Popular, which is the makeover
Yes.
sequence.
But I liked in this one, which I know I'm skipping, I liked in this one that the
They
whole
didn't
point
really
was
do
that she
anything.
nothing
Yeah.
changed. She's beautiful as she is. I loved that.
which is another cool way to like, because you have Elphaba's costumes opening her up. You want her to look good throughout the
Mhm.
movie. So I think, again, that's a change that works for this film specifically.
Well,
That sort of
mhm,
like it changes the trajectory of the song,
I
and it
agree.
adds a lot to, I think, Glinda's character, because
Mhm.
it at the end of the song, it still ends with a funny little like, you won't be as popular as I am, but like even she realizes like, I'm just gonna put this flower in your hair, and actually you are beautiful. Like it's
Right.
not the clothes, it's not anything like, and which is the 180 of the original show.
Which I think, and I think it is fully realized, right? Because instead of, it's not just that they didn't do anything to
Uh-huh.
her, right? Because it's like, how could you change her in this moment? You
Yeah.
know, how are they going to change anything? But it also is at the end, both of them look at each other and realize, and they change the I have to go isn't because she's like overwhelmed, because she's being changed so much. It's literally because she's never had anyone in her life call her
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's good.
It's really good. And she's like emotionally overwhelmed with that.
I feel like I've held back tears for the last 25 minutes.
I know, because it's so good. We can keep going because I have so many things to say as we go
Yeah.
through it. Skip to.
What are we talking about?
I know. We just finished What Is This Feeling?
That's right.
So we're at basically, I think they're Dr. Dillamond is where we're at
Yes,
now.
in the history class.
And yeah, he's starting at the history class. And again, it's cool to see how Glinda has never had to be an activist. She's never had to be smart, right? She's that thing about like, can't you just tell us about history instead of focusing on the past? And then Dr.
Yeah.
Dillamond says something along the lines of like, well,
Yeah, and again, I think it's like obvious. Like this scene paints her at first. Dr. Dillamond, he's a goat, so he can't say Galinda's name
Mhm.
correctly, and she like keeps giving him shit for it. Like for
Yeah.
a long time, she's like, it's actually just Galind. Like everybody else can pronounce my name right, and all the kids around her are like, yeah, fuck this
Right.
goat. Which I think is like, I remember watching it the first time. I was like, man, Glinda sucks. Then I was like, wait a minute, she does. You know, and that's like the point. Like you have to. I guess you don't have to, but it makes it so much more fun when you go to like the extreme of a scene like that,
Yes.
right? And it's just little things. Like you don't hate Glinda afterwards, but you
No.
understand like that's who kind of Glinda is. And it is a lot. And it makes you feel bad for Dr. Dillman right off the bat without getting too bad, because like worse stuff happens
Yeah.
later. And it's just really good. Like they go to these extremes of scenes, which is just fun to watch.
Yeah, well then Elphaba stands up for him,
Mhm.
right? And basically is like, maybe he doesn't, you've just never encountered someone with this specific, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't expect that from him.
Well, and she didn't even say that. He's like, she says, maybe his life is more important than getting your name right.
Right.
Like his
right.
time is better spent like teaching or something.
Right.
And it's crazy.
He tells them about how animals used to be all over shiz and how like
Mhm.
important they were.
Which is crazy.
Which is-
like, that's like, that's what like Republicans think is happening with like critical race theory.
right.
They pull the blinds down and they're like, this is what needs to happen.
Basically, that culminates in him flipping the board over and it's saying something along the lines of like, animals
Mhm.
should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Which I think,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the idea that animals begin to lose their ability to speak
Mhm.
from oppression is such a clever one. Because again, it's kind of taking like something literal that happens in the world, of right, like taking someone's voice away, of being unable to advocate for themselves,
Yeah.
and changing it to be like super literal.
Mhm.
In this idea that they like literally can't speak because of it is, it's just very, very cool, very
Yeah.
well thought out.
I had this idea just now. And again, I'm not like super far in the book, so I don't know. I could be totally wrong. But when they are at the first shiz scene, when they all arrive on the boats, Elphaba does the thing. She lifts up her sister who's being protected and rocks fly everywhere. And then there's a mural of the wizard that gets cracked and you falls away and you see like animals.
Yeah.
Right?
Who
And they're holding
probably
like
founded the school.
tablets. Well, I'm wondering, I bet the animals talking is like natural magic. And I think as they're being
Oh.
oppressed, magic is going away, because they say like magic is rare nowadays. Only a few people have it. I bet that's what
Whoa,
it is.
I
So I
bet
don't
you're
think I don't think
right.
magic is evil inherently. I think magic is animals inherently, and they're like taking it away,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's very cool.
which is sick.
Well-
But yeah, he turns the board over.
Because and right before that, he talks about the oppression started with a drought, which is very interesting because that is very historical. Like if you
Mhm.
look at things where like mass oppression has happened,
Yeah,
a lot of it happened because that group of people got blamed for something
Yeah.
negative happening, even though it wasn't their fault,
Mhm.
right? And so this idea of like a drought and food being scarce being blamed on the animals is very, very,
very cool.
very, very cool in like a terrible way, you know? And people are asking like, well, maybe like when did the drought happen? How did the drought happen? And could it have been like Madame Morrible because she can control the weather?
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Kind of
I don't
wondering.
know.
Maybe it's in the book.
Maybe
I don't know.
I'll catch you up.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that happens. We also get introduced like Dr. Dillman is like upset by this. Obviously, he backs in to his desk and like knocks the thing over. He dismisses class. Elphaba stays to help him like clean up, and we like figure out the poppies. He likes to have poppies with him, which is just like a thing that comes back later. Very prominent in Wizard of Oz. Cute like Easter egg at the time.
Yeah. Yes. And she even says, he's like, go be with your friends. She's like, I don't have any friends. You don't have to worry about that. It's very, I think Cynthia Erivo does a really good job of having chemistry with probably no one was there, you know, when they were filming it.
Sure.
Which
is another thing. I think the animals are another thing that, again, the movie knew how to use them. Like, the animals don't look real, I would say.
But it's okay.
They fit in the, like, kookiness of the world. Like, they're rendered in a way that looks real in the cinematic universe, I guess is what I'm saying. Which is cool, because of that, you got to do more humanistic things with them. Like, Dr. Dillman can have expressions. Like, he looks upset and he looks sad and he looks angry at times, and that's way more fun to look at than like a true to life animal.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I hate to say this, we also watched Gladiator 2 this week,
and it was awful,
and it was bad. And they tried to do the same thing. Like, they tried to make these like monkey guys look real, but then also gave them a lot of emotion out of nowhere, and it looked terrible. It was awful. So in this movie, because you've set up this world that is like magical and quirky and weird, they look fine. Like, I've never questioned it. And I'm like, yeah, that bear doesn't look like a bear, but like, who cares? You know?
Right. It's also talking. So
yeah, it's fine. It's a bear.
One more thing that before we like move on to the next part, I want to talk about the use of foreground and background is really well done and like explored to a huge extent. And I think, again, that's something you really can't do on the stage. You kind of can, but not in the same way.
No, for sure.
You can't, on stage, you can't like split your focus when you're watching like a huge stage.
Yeah.
I can't be focusing on two things. So you have to really just like minimize where the audience is supposed to be looking. And so they did such a cool job of using the foreground and the background. So like even at one point, Madame Morrible is talking to Elphaba and Glinda's like, not even, she's fully blurry. We just see like a pink blob and hear click clacking of heels like running around.
It's good.
Or everywhere Elphaba goes in the background, there is like almost choreography of ensemble or like students cheering at her, looking at her and like talking about her in every scene she's in until after the Oz does ball. So it's really well done to show you just like Elphaba's world she lives in, and she honestly ignores it every time, and that's really, I think, really cool.
For being like on film, it's very good stage pictures. Like every scene has so much going on, which makes it feel lived in, even if you don't like notice it off the bat. Like there's always students everywhere doing things, and it makes the world feel like a world, which is great.
Yes. So Elphaba goes and she's trying to work on her sorcery with Madame Morrible, and they do a really cool Easter egg where like they open the book, the Sorcerer Studies is what the book is called, and they have a shadow of her hands, which is supposed to be an Easter egg to or a reference to the famous picture of the original Wicked Witch of the West in her like shadowed hands. So very cool. They do a bunch of stuff like that, and she's trying to levitate it and she can't, and then Madame Morrible gets her upset about what happened in Dr. Dillman's class. And then she's able to do it. And she's like quoting her dad. She's like, people should just stop telling you to stop yapping and stuff like that. It made me wonder, did Madame Morrible write that on the board?
I was saying, I don't think she wrote it. I bet she knew about it though. Because if it happened that day, right? Like people are going to gossip, obviously.
Yeah.
But especially upon the second time watching it, it is very clear to me that her mindset was like, I'm going to get Elphaba mad so she can do this. So I can explain to her that her emotions are what control her power. Like, to me, there was not a sense that she was actually caring about how she felt.
Not at all.
Which is really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, like the first time around, I feel like I still got the energy of it. But it is like, it plays like a mentor scene, right? So if you're not like expecting what happens, it is sort of a big reveal when Madame Morrible is bad, you know?
Right.
And again, I just think it's really good. It's very well done. They hide things in plain sight that are hidden, which is great.
So then we see Elphaba following Dr. Dillman into his like little kind of like apartment type thing. And he's speaking with his other animal friends about the oppression that's happening and how it's getting worse, which leads into the song Something Bad. And the little light and the metal pieces were very cool. I also liked all the ways he was like the way he had a cup that was all the things, his mechanics are used to help him be able to live his life. And I think one that's very cool because you see that if the world was made with animals in mind, everything would be like that, which again feels like it parallels our world in some ways. But also the wizard does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And he's got all his mechanics that sort of make his life easier. And but his is just a facade. And I could see how people would look down on Dillamond for being that way. And it's very cool to me.
It's very cool.
Yeah, we learn that they're like losing their ability of speech and that the impression is happening worse and worse. And Elphaba's like, we've got to tell the wizard. It's sort of her mindset that he can help us. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about that part?
No, I think it's done well. Peter Dinklage is Dr. Dillamond, and he's not like the best singer in the group, but I think it's fine. It's passable for sure. I do like the little metal things. It makes me laugh thinking of like this goat building these metal contraptions, you know, because they're great. I think this is my favorite vocal line in the thing. So we have Dr. Dillamond singing most of the time. And then Cynthia Riva comes in and she's like, that's why we have a wizard. And then she lays down this really smooth, so nothing bad. And it's just gorgeous. And like, I don't have anything like metaphorical to say about it. I just think it's my favorite thing that's sung because it's absolutely beautiful. At the end, he goes, nothing bad. And if you laughed, you're the problem.
Right, exactly. Because it wasn't funny.
It wasn't funny.
It's not.
It was very scary, actually.
It actually is so scary.
It was very scary. I cried the first time. I was like, oh my God.
I know. It's sad.
I'm not afraid to admit it either.
So
but
then,
now, on the way back.
as we're walking home, we get Fiyero accidentally like runs into Elphaba. And I thought this was one, Jonathan
with his
Bailey.
horse friend.
Yeah. Jonathan Bailey is phenomenal as Fiyero. I think everyone was very well cast. Every single person is stellar.
I fully agree.
But continuing like on, I like how he did not from the very beginning. He was never negative to her.
Yeah.
You know, he's still very like flirty in himself, but he kind of treats her like everyone else,
Yeah.
which I just loved that because I do think Fiyero, like at his heart, is a good person.
I agree. And I think it's really cool. So Fiero's whole thing is that his song is dancing through life and it's about like not caring. And he says a lot of things about being brainless and not like just thinking about things, which is very cool because you find out at the end of the second act, he is the
big
Scarecrow.
Spoiler. Yeah, big spoiler. He becomes the Scarecrow.
Which is cool. But on top of that, I feel like the way this movie portrayed him, he does care. We find that out, obviously. He cares about things. But when he says he doesn't care, I think it's like he is just accepting of people.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like he sees Elphaba and he's not like geared away because like who cares?
Right.
And I think that's another cool parallel to this character. Like within the facade, there is some honesty in that.
Yes.
Like he is not up in arms about people who are different, who think different, which I think is really cool.
Because he does care about the animals because like it to him, I agree. It's very similar. And I just think he's a prince, right? He's sort of had everything handed to him. And
yes,
this is skipping ahead a little bit, but whenever we're at the Ozdust Ball in Dancing Through Life, after his whole song, he sees Elphaba and it feels like he has a moment of realization where Elphaba has not been given the luxury to dance through life. And I think that was the Ozdust Ball was the realization of like,
yeah,
it's like when you realize your own privilege.
Yeah. So I want to say a lot about this.
So
that's
come
like
back
the
to
next
it. Okay.
scene that happens.
Yeah. Okay. We'll skip that. Yeah. I won't skip.
So they meet in the forest. They have a little meet cute. Elphaba is standoffish as always.
Yeah.
He's like, damn, you're standoffish. Then they leave.
Well, and then he's like asks her something and she says, no, thanks, get stuffed, which is such a good because he's like the Scarecrow and he's like stuffed with straw, right? It's just they do all these really good things. Even and like Bach, I skipped over Bach because we've gotten to him, but not really. We'll come back to him.
So yeah, then it's like announced Fiyero is like coming as a student to Shiz, and Glinda like readies herself to like flirt, and it's this really cute scene. It's absolutely great. A lot of people are saying Ariana Grande acts like a Disney character in this, and I feel like this scene is like the perfect amalgamation of that. Like she is doing such cartoonishly big things that plays super well in this world. So he walks up to like a map of the campus. She's there. She like steals a book from somebody. She's reading like a law book, and they're like doing this hot people flirtation thing, and it's playing super well on camera. They go into the library. We meet Bach there, and he's like, what do y'all do for fun? And they're like, what is fun? And he decides that they're gonna go out to like the club that night, which starts Dancing Through Life, which is if you want to.
Well, it just might be my favorite number. Well, and I think
so.
he sounds beautiful. I think he's mixed the best.
Okay.
But I think he also sounds stunning on it. And I think it's just so lively and fun. And I think that us meeting Fierro coming off of the song Something Bad
exactly
is really cool, because you even as an audience are like, well, I don't want to think about the animals being oppressed. I want to dance through life too, because you want that. Sounds great. That sounds amazing. And you feel kind of the same way. You're like shaking off all the bad things that's happened, and you kind of forget about this oppression you just witnessed, right? And this like literal hate crime.
Yeah, there's too much fun to be sad.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what he does. And I think he did all the choreography, all the stunt, amazing, phenomenal, so well done, so energized, so creative with the books and the library, and
for sure. I think this is another example, like just doing your homework all the way. Like he clearly knows the fate of this character. So to have him like emphasize like his lanky, like he just moves around in the way that it's like, that is so smart. Like it's Scarecrow like, it's so good.
Right. Well, and the lyrics are so clever where he's like, when basically life is less fraughtless when you're thoughtless.
Yeah, life is less painless when you're brainless.
Right.
It's so dumb in a cute way.
Right.
Like,
and it works so well. And you're kind of like, when I first heard it, because I've never listened all the way through Dancing Through Life. I actually think I like this one better than the Broadway one. Maybe that's why I like this one so much. So I've never like listened to the lyrics really of Dancing Through Life. So when I heard it, I was like, he says brainless. I was like, because I know he becomes Scarecrow. But I literally gasped. I was like, I cannot believe that. And they do some really cool things with his characterization. And
it's great. This scene is also one of the scenes the second time I was like, man, it is crazy how believable Ariana Grande is. Because like everybody's phenomenal. Like I cannot say that enough. Everybody's phenomenal. But clearly like one person in the cast is the most famous. Yes.
Right.
And I feel like, because I was wondering, because they like dance together, and I was like, wow, that's got to be like nerve-wracking to like dance on screen with Ariana Grande. Then I was like, honestly though, she's literally just being Glinda. Like she is acting so hard in this, and it's so cool to have somebody so popular and so like actually real life cool just fully commit to this.
Well, also because like Cynthia Erivo's amazing, and I can't remember her name, sorry, but the actress who plays Madame Morble was like nervous on set to sing. I would be too.
As a singer, I'd be like, no.
I'd be like, I'm good.
Can you turn around?
And she, in an interview, she said she was like very nervous and struggling. And Cynthia Erivo went up to her and said, "You've got this. What are you doing? You know what you're doing. You can do this." And so like, I'm sure on set was just like wonderful. I'm sure they were all wonderful to each other.
And I feel like it shows. It shows, absolutely.
Because they're all so willing to be vulnerable and really live as these characters, and you have to have that for something like this. Yeah, which is it's so fun because this is the Wizard of Oz. This is like a kid's story, and this is like the grown-up retelling or whatever. But like to have this level of commitment on such a fun, fantastical thing, like that's what makes it so good. Like I feel like this is our peak media. Like this is made for us, Yeah. I'm all about like fairy tales and childhood, and to have so many professional people give their all to something like this, like just it's truly amazing. This movie is amazing. It is. It's so good. So Dancing Through Life happens, and at this point, Bach, who's like loves Glinda, right?
Yes,
he's obsessed
from
with her.
Munchkin Land.
Yes,
Ethan Slater plays him.
And he's very talented.
He was SpongeBob on Broadway. He's real life dating Ariana Grande.
Yes,
crazy. Good for him. Yeah, really. They he's like Glinda, and she's trying to get Fierro, so she can't have time with him, and she persuades Bach. She manipulates, I should say, Bach into asking out Nessa, and he does so, which Nessa is like so happy about it because she's sort of ostracized in her own way as well. And Nessa tells Elphaba like, oh my gosh, all because of Glinda, I can be like happy. Yeah. Right? Which is such a knife in the heart. Which it's also such a good like microcosm equals macrocosm. Like this is such a good example of how Glinda's
terribly selfish and manipulative action is perceived as good.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Fiyero even says, "You're good."
Yes.
Like as like a
And
like
she
little
says,
flirt, but
right.
like he used that word specifically.
And he knows too. He knows she was manipulating. Yes. He says, "You're good." That's genius. And no, that's so smart. And she says, "I don't know what you're talking about." Because to her, for the world to see, she's not manipulating. She's helping someone.
Mm-hmm.
When at its core, she's not being a good person.
Yeah.
It's so well done. And so Elphaba, in seeing how happy Nessa is, because Elphaba truly does love Nessa and cares for Nessa.
Yes. That's the one thing we know for sure about Elphaba's character.
Right. She will.
Like, she has aspirations for herself, but she will do anything for Nessa.
Yes. And she decides basically, okay, well, you know what? Glinda was so nice to Nessa. I'm going to end this feud, and I'm going to go give Glinda the one thing she wants, which is lessons for sorcery from Madame Morble. And she goes that night, and she threatens that she's going to quit, basically.
Yeah.
And unless Glinda's given that opportunity tonight, which is really good. Glinda obviously doesn't know this yet. So Madame Morble, when Elphaba comes in,
they're like getting ready to go out.
Then
and what the two side characters find like a witch hat, which is like the hat.
And it's like, quote, ugly, you know?
And it's canonically it's made by Elphaba's grandmother.
Or Glinda's grandmother.
Glinda's grandmother. And she's like, I wouldn't give that to anybody because I don't hate them enough. And then they all just look at each other and they're like, no. So at like, we find that Elphaba walks in, and then we get the trading off of the hat. Like, you should come tonight. Like, again, this like terrible irony we're feeling. It's great. This is the second time we hear the theme of like, we deserve each other. The first time when it's Nessa and Bach, and now it's Elphaba and the hat, which is one of my favorite themes of the whole show. And I don't know why. I just think it's great. I think it sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
It's sandwiched in the middle of Dancing Through Life, but it's so good.
Mm-hmm. I think that Elphaba thought Glinda was giving the ceasefire, essentially, that Glinda was saying like, hey, let's be friends now. And so that's why Elphaba let herself be manipulated in that way.
Yeah.
Because she thought...
because you got to Nessa, which comes back in Act 2. Like, the one way to get to Elphaba is through Nessa.
Right. So
smart.
It is. And so she like basically wears the hat is kind of the thing. And we're at the Ostis ball. Everyone's having such a good time. Nessa and Bach dance. Like, it's all like, it's very cute.
Yeah. Madame Morble shows up to give the wand to Glinda as and then Elphaba arrives.
And Glinda realizes like what she's done. And something else, you and I looked at each other when we saw it. When you get to the Ostis ballroom, we see the animals are playing instruments.
Yes.
Because marginalized and oppressed groups, the oppressor is okay with them entertaining them.
For entertainment, and that
absolutely.
They just can't teach.
They just can't, right. They can't have, they can entertain, but they can't teach, right?
Yeah.
And that's an incredibly realistic like thing that happens in real life.
And that's a very subtle one, because it showed like the animals in this like wacky shot, and they're having so much fun. But both of us were like, oh shit, immediately. Which is like, in the obviousness, there are things like that where like you do need to be paying attention, but they make it very easy to pay attention because you're having so much fun the whole time.
And if you're paying attention, you see it, because that's
and of course during Dancing Through Life, we're not going to harp on that, right?
Yes.
We're going to see it, and then we're going to not think about it because they don't show them any time throughout the rest of the night.
No, it's just that one little moment where you realize like they are the entertainment, which there's like a whole musical. Cabaret is all about that, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's so all the small details make up how amazing this is. So so Elphaba joins, and she's like absolutely ridiculed. Everybody's laughs at her, and what happens is she just like takes off the hat and does her own dance, you know?
Yeah.
And Fiyero even says like she doesn't care what anyone thinks. And it's like, if you could think that, you know, that she doesn't care, but Glinda
and
knows.
This is the thing I wanted to add. You said that earlier, like Fiyero getting this idea that like some people don't have the luxury to dance through life. So he immediately like understands from his point of view, it's like, wow, she doesn't care at all. And then
that's what
Glinda
he would think,
being the other kind of knowledgeable and wise, knowing that no, she actually cares insanely.
She's pretending.
You know, which is crazy. Which is again, like he's also putting up a wall, which is very fun. But it's little moments like that show that like all these characters are smart. They're fully realized people. They just have valued different things and come from different places, which is just really powerful.
It is. Absolutely. And so she does the dance very bravely on her own. And then Glinda decides to do the dance with her. And it's I think it's so well done. I think the dance is very cool.
It's very cool. Her two like sidekicks have been like, you need to stop. And she like says no to them.
And eventually everyone else like joins in and stops laughing at her. And I think the length of like them ridiculing her goes on so long in a good way.
It goes on for a long time.
In a good way. And then Glinda dances with her and everyone just like jumps in and starts dancing and has a good time. And they're all dancing through life. The song ends and it's beautiful and everyone's having fun and smiling and giggling and laughing and enjoying it so much. And it's like all it took was one person.
Yeah. Well, all it took was like the right person. All it took was somebody who's been put up their entire lives to sway crowds. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Like you see the effect Glinda has because she is perfectly like calculated this effect, right? This is her. She's maximized this, right? It's like hard work that's happened. Also privilege, of course, and like other things that's been given to her. But she does work hard to convince people she's, quote, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even like this idea that she's in loathing when she's in what is this feeling when she's absolutely being awful to Elphaba. Everyone calls her a martyr. Yeah. And it's like, again, it's like this propaganda of what goodness is.
Yeah, we can talk about it. It's going with the status quo makes things easier, but you still need to have a knowledge of how to navigate things.
Yes.
You know, it's like going into politics, right? You need to talk a certain way. You need to do certain things. And I think it's just, again, in the show and in this movie specifically, it's portrayed in such a way that you do understand Glinda's point of view. Like she's not just this character. She's not just this side. Like
she's not just dumb. She's not just evil. You know, there's so much depth to her. And but it is quite heartbreaking to see that like one person standing up for her. Just something so easy. All Glinda had to do was stand up for her once.
Yeah. And then immediately everybody is fine with it.
And throughout the rest of the film, people don't ridicule her in that way until Defying Gravity.
You know who else probably had that power? The mayor of the town she was born from.
Yep.
Her father, you know?
Yeah. Because even Nessa does not stand up for her. And granted, Nessa does not have sort of the privilege Glinda has because Nessa is like different, right? She is in a wheelchair, right? And so people, she might not have had that same power, but Nessa very much does not help.
Yeah, well, and I do think it's fun because like, again, like drawing parallels between characters. I feel like Nessa and Dr. Dillamond actually parallel each other in an interesting way because they're both oppressed groups.
Right. And we don't necessarily see like Nessa's oppression in the same way.
But we see Nessa's oppression through the lens of she is so defeated by life.
Yes.
Like she believes that she can't do anything. Right. And she tries to be like independent in ways, but like she's not going to stand up for anybody.
But people don't give her that independence. They try to take it from her. Like when they take her chair and things like that. And she's like, I don't want help.
Which feeds in later. Again, big spoiler. Bach, they fall in love, quote unquote.
Right.
And she keeps him with her. Like as the plot progresses at the end of the movie, her dad has a heart attack, so she's now like the mayor of Munchkinland, and she basically just traps Bach because she feels like she needs him. She needs someone around, which again, like that's the opposite side of like there's an oppressed group, and then there's like letting the oppression fully take you over, and now you are also now the bad guy. You know, it's very complicated.
It's very complicated because she does add to the oppression that Elphaba faces.
Yeah,
you know,
and like, it's the idea that like all like these marginalized groups need to band together.
Well, the society will absolutely. That's the whole thing. I literally talk about this probably daily. But keeping marginalized groups, keeping oppressed groups against each other, which is the whole point the wizard talks about at the end. I'm skipping a little bit. Sorry. Is that what brings people together is a common enemy?
Yeah, and.
I guess I'll explore that more when we get there, but like it's
just crazy how thought out and how politically smart
complex
this adaptation of The Wizard of Oz is.
Yes. But basically they go, now that they're friends, you know, they tell each other secrets and it's very cute and fun. And we learn that Elphaba says her secret is that she blames herself for her mom dying and Nessa being in a wheelchair. And it's heartbreaking because Cynthia Erivo like does such a good job where she's almost like accepted it. And it's just like, this is what it is. And it's like absolutely heartbreaking. And you see Glinda like tell her, no, that's not your fault. And I'm sure no one in her life has ever told her that's not her fault.
Not once. And it's, again, it gives Glinda some much needed
redemption,
sympathy points. Because you she's not evil. She's not bad. Like, you can still like Glinda at this point, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes this bond really strong, which needed to happen.
I also just think, again, she does not realize what Elphaba faces. And I think when you're seeing What Is This Feeling and it's like everyone's backing Glinda, it like borders on bullying, because like bullying is an imbalance of power, right? And Glinda has all the power. I would say
it doesn't border. Like, when everybody looks at her and says, I loathe you.
Yeah,
like,
okay, yeah.
crazy.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like, you see the power that Glinda has, and you see even like, it's almost just what's the word? Ignorance, right? It's this ignorance that Glinda has, that all the power she's had and the way she's able to even like help Elphaba here and tell her things that nobody in her life has ever told her, you know? Okay, anything else you want to say about what we've talked about so far?
I don't think so. Again, I think it's just as you watch more of the movie and as you figure out like what happens in Act 2, all of these themes and all of these character things just keep building off each other. And it's just beautiful. Like, it's so good. I hope to see it many, many more times in theaters.
Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers, hoping they're going to secretly release part 2 on Christmas Day this year. I know. Because I think we all need it.
Yeah, we do.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I cannot say enough good things about it.
So our next episode is going to be popular on through the end.
Through the end.
So, so this has been our like part 1 review of part 1 of Wicked.
Thanks so much for listening. If you liked it, let us know. We interact with all the comments we get on every social media platform. And leave us a review. That's how more people find out about us. Until then, I'm Alex.
I'm Madison.
And this has been Welcome to the Writer's Room. We'll see you in the next one.